the world is facing a crisis, and only God knows the answer. But I will be dealing with this because I believe the Lord has revealed quite a lot to me in prophecy, and I will be dealing with this in some of my meetings that are celebrating my 75 years anniversary in ministry. Anyway, today I'm speaking to you from the New International Version, and it's from the second letter of Peter and the second chapter. Now, this, quite honestly, is not an easy chapter to deal with, but I feel very sad in a way, because I just feel that this second chapter is dealing with the very issues that we're facing in the church today. I finished the last message just dealing about prophecy, but in the opening verse of chapter 2, it says simply, "There were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who bought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves." That's just the first verse. The danger is that this was apparent even going back into the days of the Apostle Paul. You find even in his ministry, in his lifetime, there were many that opposed him, teaching false things. Peter is referring exactly to the same. And remember that this Peter was very close to Christ. He was one of the three that were with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. And so I think we've got to listen very carefully to his warnings. You see, there are so many things, quite honestly, that are happening in the church, and I'm speaking particularly in Britain and in the Western church. Thank God, churches in the former communist countries have been preserved from a lot of this, but we have got many people here. I think a lot of it did start in America, but we have it in Britain, where there are people who are false teachers. Mind, unfortunately, this goes back in history, because even in my father's day, there were serious false teachings which he warned me against, and my father had to take a strong stand against them. This is nothing new, but it is clear that we're facing this at this particular time today. These people who, in a guise of prophecy or of teaching, are bringing in heresies. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes how some of these are coming and how serious they are. You see, the trouble is we're having to look today on the churches. Now, thank God for evangelical churches, and there are still many of them, thank God, that teach the Word of God, the simple truths of the Word of God. But we've got a situation where, especially in some of the established churches, you don't even have to be converted to be a leader. If you simply follow the so-called teachings of the church, and in many cases, the so-called seminaries, or I don't want to call them Bible schools, these so-called seminaries, they actually spend more time teaching church doctrine than Bible doctrine. And we've really got to get back to the truth of the Bible. So Peter goes on and he says, "Many will follow these shameful ways and will bring the truth of the word of God into disrepute. And then in verse 3, he points out, in their greed, some of the teachers will exploit you. And sadly to say, this has been very significant in the last generation of churches, where people have been exploited over finance, where preachers have made themselves wealthy with their private airplanes and their wealthy living, instead of using money to evangelize and preach the gospel. No, they've brought condemnation. They've exploited. And I don't know how that word translates into your language, but in English, it's very, very simple. It's exploiting people financially. But Peter says their condemnation has been hanging over them for a long time, and their destruction is prepared. For in verse 4, Peter really sums this up quite strongly. And this is, I'm sorry to say, but this is a very important message, because it says in verse 4, if God did not spare angels when they sinned, listen to this. I don't hear preachers talking about this. If God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them in gloomy dungeons in chains to be held for judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world, and this is going back, when he brought the flood on ungodly people. Why did God destroy the flood in Noah's day? Because of sin. No, let's face it, he destroyed the whole world. But he did protect Noah and 7 others with him. That was his family.